Hey AfterBuzzers, welcome to Spotlight On. Today I am in studio with Jenny Jaffe. She is super funny. She has a show called Neurotica on IFC. She just wrote a book that is out today. All that and more coming up.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
I was reading for my copy. Oh, there it is. There it is. Thank you.
It seems like a sports show or something. I assume. I've never watched one.
A sports show or us?
A sports. Oh, I've never. Well, either, both. I love the fine products of AfterBuzz TV. I just have never watched I've watched like a sports game. I've never watched like people talking about the sports game.
You know what's going to happen every time you say something good, you'll know, because I'm going to be like, score!
Perfect.
So just heads up.
Okay, good.
So everyone, hey, I'm your host, Zoe Hewitt. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RealZoeHewitt. And sitting directly to my left is Jenny.
Hi, I'm Jenny Jaffe. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jenny Jaffe with one E.
That's good because it is important to know, but two F's.
Yes, two F's.
And two N's.
Two N's, two J's in different names. And you can also find me at Facebook. On Facebook, there is a Neurotica Facebook page if you want to watch all the episodes of Neurotica. And on IFC.com.
And of course, people should want to, because Neurotica is where I wanted to start, because it is
great.
Fabulous. So
Thank you.
This is a show on IFC. They are short. It's only about 3 minutes each.
Yeah.
There are 6 total right now, about a dominatrix and some of her idiosyncrasies, I guess we could say. They are so funny, like I have to tell you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I play a dominatrix with OCD. And she finds out that a new mega dungeon is coming to her small town, which threatens to overrun her mom and pop dungeon. And that sort of gets her anxiety and OCD back into high gear, and she has to figure out how to overcome those fears in order to fall in love and stop this mega dungeon.
And what I love about this, too, is that you might start it thinking, like, okay, like, we'll see, like, there's, you know, with a title like this, a topic, like, there's some sexy, but, like, it's so funny. Like, that's what I keep going back to. Like, from the very beginning, I just loved seeing everyone come to the door and saying, like, here's this, prepared exactly this way. So it gets you from the start.
Yeah, I think my parents were a little bit nervous about what a show with this subject matter might look like, but I think what it actually is very sweet and bubbly and optimistic, and it's more really about the small town coming together to support somebody and somebody finding inner strength, and I think those are really sweet no matter what what they're steeped in.
Yeah, I agree, because the whole town is in on it, and I think that's one of the great parts, too, that we get to this town hall meeting, and there's no embarrassment.
No, nobody's judgmental.
Come on, guys, I know all of you.
I love that, though. I mean, everybody's got their things they're into and their weird quirks, and I just love the idea of this version of a world where everybody's open about that.
And accepting.
Yeah.
And so was there any part in particular that resonates with you, like, that you think about and think, like, that was so funny? Because, like, for me, like I say, I think back and I think as great as the series was, like, that opening, is, like, it drew me in like that.
Yeah, the first episode is one of my favorites, and then the other thing that I always think about is the sequence of myself and my friend Max, who plays my love interest in the show. We go on some romantic dates, but romantic from my character's point of view. So it's stuff like I'm riding a bike along the street and he's being pulled along on a rope, and I'm standing on his back to plug in Christmas lights.
That was my favorite,
So that's, that sequence is really fun to shoot, too, because we shot it right outside his mom's house on Long Island, and so all of her neighbors were just watching this happen, and you know what? They were very cool about it. That, and also in the first episode, there's a moment where it flashes from me saying, I should talk to the mayor about this, side flash to the mayor in a cage, me with a cattle prod, shocking him.
And one of the things you told me earlier about the mayor is he was a friend of yours.
Yes.
And he had to stay in that cage for an hour?
Yeah, something like that. And he's like 6'4". he's a tall guy, and so what happened was we rented a cage at like Petco or something like that, and brought it in, had him in it. He was all tied up and very game, but like it could not have been comfortable. And then we brought it back and we were like, oh, the dog was too big. Like, I don't know, sorry.
Okay, I like that you started by saying you rented it from Petco, and on the side my mind was going, you can rent that stuff until we get to the end.
Yeah.
The dog was too big.
I say rent. I think maybe we returned under false pretenses.
To be very specific.
Right, exactly.
I feel like now Petco can get a small credit in the show.
They probably
Thanks to
should,
Petco.
honestly, yeah.
And so an hour, like he was on his knees, sort of, and for anyone who hasn't seen, he was on his knees, his arms were behind his back, like he was fit into a dog cage.
Yes.
I mean, how did he get out of that?
I don't remember. I mean, like, to be fair, I was also sort of like corseted up, and I was wearing like leather. It was this very hot basement. Outside it was freezing. Like, nobody was comfortable the duration of this shoot. There was another day where we were outside because we filmed at the beginning of December in New York. And there's a scene where I meet a rival dominatrix who's wearing very little. And if you watch the show, you'll see she's wearing basically like a collection of strings. And it was maybe 30 degrees that day. And in between shots, like the costume person would run in and put a coat around her, but it was miserable. And I'm glad that whole sequence turned out really funny, but yeah, there was a lot that was not physically comfortable throughout the shoot for anybody.
I feel like that's really method, right?
It's so, and you know what
uncomfortable.
though, if there's a season 2, we're doing it in Hawaii and we're all wearing pajamas. That's the whole season.
But very skimpy pajamas.
Very skimpy pajamas, yeah, exactly.
And so it was very cool that IFC bought this. You had pitched it to a few different places beforehand, right? And then
I think I had it as a concept that I had talked to a couple of places about, but then IFC, when I mentioned it, was just really on board with it immediately. And I was really lucky about that because it's a big concept, but it's quite an elevator pitch. And I think that it just happened to get to the right people, and the people I worked with at IFC were so supportive and so responsive, and just really champions for this project. So I got really lucky with that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a great platform, but you had to sit on this also for a long time, right? Like you said, you were shooting in like November, December of last year, and it just aired recently.
Yeah, I've been sitting on this for a while, and so that was like a kind of, there's a lot of waiting, there's a lot of hurry up stop in this industry, and it's a lot of having something happen very quickly and having to shoot. We shot over the course of like 3 days, and we had to get it out before February. I think we had to have it all edited, but then it just was sort of waiting for the next year. So, you know, it's interesting to sort of be like this far out and be like, oh, wow, I was like 15 pounds lighter when we shot this. Or like, it's just, there's a lot of things like that. I mean, so the book you were talking about, this project that I wrote for The Devastator, which is a small comedy press, was written exactly a year ago. I think we turned in the last draft October of last year. So it's funny, like when you kind of, by the time something's coming out, by the time you're telling people about it, you're like, yeah, I know, I did that forever ago. But it was exciting to have Neurotica come out and see the response, because I was nervous. I wasn't sure what the reaction was going to be, or if people would like it or respond to it.
And comedy is like that, I feel like, maybe more so even than other genres, because people have so many different opinions about what's funny.
Right.
So you could be like, yeah, this is the funniest thing I've ever done. And people would be like, yeah. So, like, I feel like there's a higher level of nerves in some ways. I don't know. I'm not comedic, like, in the least, but
I think it's nerve-wracking because it's something personal, and that is something you find funny, or something that for whatever reason you were like, that's the comedic choice I want to make. And you don't know if by the time it comes out, it's like, there was a bad news story about a dominatrix with OCD in a small town in upstate New York, and now nobody wants to sort of touch that material. And the world has changed significantly since I wrote it. I wrote it during the Obama administration. Yeah. So it's interesting sort of having something. I don't think this isn't a topical thing. This is a sort of like absurdist, surreal thing. So I didn't really have to worry about that. But writing anything even vaguely topical, culture shifts so quickly. And I think all you can do really is write something that you believe in and hope you still believe in it a year later.
When it comes to
Yeah,
fruition.
when it finally comes out.
And so how did you keep from like singing it off rooftops? I feel like, because you probably had to keep it quiet, right? Under
Yeah.
wraps. And I feel like I'd want to be like, everybody, guess what?
I think I think people knew that I was doing it like in my life people
right.
knew, but I don't know. I guess I'm like used to it now. I also think nothing's final till it's final. Like even if we had it all finished, even if it was ready to go, they could have said at any moment like we actually aren't going to do this. And you just don't want that moment of it's hard enough being disappointed. It's way harder when other people you have to like say actually that thing isn't happening. So nothing's kind of done until it's done.
Yeah. Which makes it, I feel like, extra difficult too, because you've got like this competing interest of super excited with, okay, let's temper that.
Well, I'm a naturally very enthusiastic person, and I'm somebody who's always going to want to just like, let's talk about it, let's do this thing. So it's tough for me that I have to also temper my expectations, and I just have to be like, I'm never going to get too happy about something, and I'm never going to get too disappointed about something. Like I keep it in the middle until it's done. So that was definitely like an exercise in patience, though. A lot of this year has been an exercise in like waiting for things to happen, and I think it's valuable.
Learning to wait.
Yeah, it's tough.
And at the same time as you were doing this, you were also working at Disney, is that right? On Big Hero 6 on the TV version.
Yes.
Which is also right around now.
Right, well, which just got a release date yesterday. And so I wouldn't have been able to say this yesterday, but I think November 20th is going to be the first
coming right up.
premiere.
Right.
Yeah, that
and
happens.
It's a movie, like, is the first episode, right? And then we go to, like, more episodes.
Yeah, I don't know what the airing schedule is like after that, but yeah, it starts with a TV movie. So I'm really proud of that show too.
And so to even work on a project that derives from an Oscar-winning film must have been like, whoa, I can't believe I'm here at Disney. What was it like working on this project?
It's been amazing. I mean, it's just I'm a huge Disney fan. It's been a lifelong dream of mine to work for Disney, and trying to live up to it, because I have so many fond memories from my childhood of watching Disney shows and Disney animated shows, and it's crazy to me to think that something I write could be a part of somebody else's childhood, so that is really important to me. And I also just the quality is really high, and I feel like I'm learning a lot and have learned a lot. So.
And since you've worked for a lot of other networks like MTV and VH1 also, with obviously like very different styles, was there anything when you went to Disney that was like, okay, here's the like list of do's and don'ts?
No, nothing like that stylistically. I think it's, as a TV writer, there's sort of a skill set you have to learn, which is when you're writing in somebody as part of either somebody else's voice or as part of another collective of voices, and when it's just your voice, and where you can kind of overlap those two things. And I think I infuse the same optimism and excitement about things into pretty much everything I do. I hope I do anyway, which is why it's compatible for me to be writing about, the things I wrote about Neurotica, but also to work on things with a younger audience. I think I have that sort of specific energy, and I hope I can bring that to everything, but also being able to blend your voice with a whole project is an important skill set.
And how many people were on the regular writing staff with you then?
There are 4 writers. Yeah.
So you guys had to really like weave.
Yeah, I don't
voices
know how
together?
much I'm supposed to talk about any of this. But yeah, I mean, I think you're hired for specific projects because your voice naturally
Fits.
works or fits, or
We won't ask any more
I'm
details.
not sure. Yeah.
No, but it is really exciting, and it's exciting to work on a big project like that.
Yeah, it's really crazy. It's also one of these things, I think, something that happened with Neurotica and something that happens with this book, and you sometimes forget you're writing for people. You're like, I've been working on this for years. I almost forgot that anybody else is going to see it. It's crazy to me at some point that somebody will see this, because it's like, I've been doing this for a long time, sort of in my own little vacuum. So yeah, I forget that with Twitter too, honestly. You're just typing into a vacuum, and then somebody responds or it hits the right person at the right time. It's like, oh, right. you're reading that. I should be more conscientious about that. Yeah.
It's not just me.
Right, exactly.
And so we've referenced your book a few times now. So it's called Now Playing at the Umlaut Cinema.
Yes.
It just came out today. So woohoo, October 18th.
Yes,
which
it's
is super
available in
exciting.
digital for $1.
Woo!
So you should definitely check that out. Devastatorpress.com, I believe. And that's also on Twitter and Facebook. And I've shared it a bunch. It was written with the hilarious Gabriel Lax. And we just have a mutual love of pretentious art house cinemas and the pretentious art house movies they show. And so it's sort of a fake film guide from one that we made up.
And so fake in terms of, do you talk about fake movies or like laughing about movies that exist?
Well,
what can people expect?
It's primarily movies that we made up. And that was the most fun thing for me is we just came up with the title of a pretentious movie and then what it was about.
Right.
But occasionally we'll justify them showing a movie like The Mummy or Deadpool and like why would an art house movie be, like theater be showing this? Like what do they see as the artistic value there?
And which I love because on one hand, like it's joking, but on the other hand, I feel like that's also very true in some ways. Like to me, I feel like art house cinema sometimes it's like so depressing.
Yes.
Why? Why does everything have to be so darn depressing all the time?
You also get a flavor of like who the person who runs this theater is and what their other programming blocks are and the history of this theater and why, you know, it's constantly being bombed for bed bugs. Like, yeah, I think it's fun. It's just really silly. It's just a joke bucket is the way they kind of talk about it in comedy. It's just a thing that the idea is just to fill it with as many jokes as possible.
Which it sounds very enjoyable to me. So I'll have to check it out.
Yes,
Hopefully
please.
everyone else will too. And you have another book coming out too in 2018. Is that right? Are we allowed to talk about that?
I don't think we're allowed to talk about that.
So it's a secret. You'll have to come back and
I'll
talk to me again,
Yeah,
Jenny.
definitely. Absolutely.
But something that I know we are allowed to talk about is an organization that's very dear
Yes,
to you that
please.
you started, a nonprofit.
I did.
Project You Are Okay. And so it deals with letting teens in particular, but really everyone know that mental illness is okay, that other people suffer too, and they're not alone.
Yes.
And you took some time off to start it, didn't you?
Yeah. So I was working as a comedy writer, and I ended up taking 2 years and just sort of started a nonprofit for a variety of reasons, personal reasons, professional reasons. I just felt like this was something that I needed to do, and I am somebody you may be able to tell who has struggled with pretty severe OCD and anxiety my whole life. And I really wanted to have a resource like this when I was a teenager, dealing with things that I thought I was the only one. So the idea behind Project You Are Okay is it's a platform where we create digital content for teens and young adults who are struggling with mental illness, and then also invite them into the conversation. I think that teens are a lot smarter than we give them credit for sometimes. I think the best person to lead a conversation about something someone's going through are the people going through it. And that's true of any social justice movement. And I do see the fight for mental health representation and accessibility as far as resources goes as a social justice movement. I think that we have an attitude as a society that mental health is not as important as physical health. And the truth is they're kind of the same thing. It's having an illness like anything else, and you need to treat it with specific types of treatments.
Right.
But that's not going to happen until the conversation that we have around it is open and inviting and brings a lot of people who normally maybe wouldn't have their voice as part of the conversation into the fold.
Right. And I don't want to put you on this spot, but anyone who is interested can go. You have your story very personally
yes.
on this site,
Yeah.
which is very emotional. And then you also have several celebrities who also agreed to answer questions. How did you get everyone on board? Because these are really personal stories.
Yeah, that was the thing, is it was very scary at first for me. Like, I had never spoken publicly about a lot of the things I go into detail with through Project You Are Okay, and I wasn't sure how it would be received. And what I found was that when I came forward and was really open, a lot of other people were ready to come forward and be open as well. And people were more excited about that opportunity than they were the majority of the time the response was, that's really exciting, and like I think I could do that too. And we never pushed anybody to say anything they weren't comfortable with. I think the idea is just giving people a non-judgmental platform from which to speak about something that people usually don't feel comfortable talking about that. And the best way to do that is by sort of setting that example, I think. I think it would have been hypocritical for me to have reached out to people and asked if they wanted to share their stories if I wasn't also ready and willing to come forward with it. And the thing about a lot of people who are successful in especially the entertainment field is not only do a lot of them have different struggles with mental illness or have experience with friends who have dealt with something, they're also usually in the lucky position where they're in an industry where it's not going to cost them their job to come forward about it. They can, it's sort of expected. And I think the hope is that we would get to a point where it's no scarier for somebody to say like, oh, I've been dealing with depression, than it is for them to say, oh, I had a broken leg.
Good. And so I think that that's really interesting that your point is that in entertainment there are a lot of people who have these either same struggles or no people, because I still look at it and think, wow, like, is there this worry of I might not get another job to be so honest here, that it might conflict with, say, another employer's like values or something?
Right. Well, I mean, I think unfortunately for a lot of people in the world, that is the reality, is that if they came forward about something they were going through with their mental health, they might not be considered employable in a certain field, or they might worry about being able to keep custody of their kids, or there's just there are a lot of things that because mental health is so deeply stigmatized, I think it's those are real risks. And I think I was just in a position where I was not at risk for any of those things. I felt like my generation, I think, is a little bit more open, and, you know, living on the coasts and working in entertainment, I felt like it would be safe for me to talk about these things. I've also already dealt with a lot of it. I've been through 20 years of therapy. I have, you know, a pretty good grasp on what my issues are. So I felt like I just needed to use that sort of privilege and luck for something good to try and pass it forward. And I think that the really cool thing is just watching how much the conversation has sort of shifted that way. And I'm like very impressed with how open people are. And I think that the next generation coming up, teenagers, are really open too. I think that for all the downsides of social media and the internet, it's also a great place for people to connect over things they might have felt really alone about before.
And yes, and the comments on the site are so overwhelmingly, I guess, impressive in how many people it's touched. Like under the videos of, I felt just this way too. So like
that's
you say,
the best feeling, is reading something like that and being like, this is exactly why we did it. Honestly, also sometimes I would say something and I'm like, look, I don't know if anybody else has ever dealt with this. And then when people would comment, I was like, I was feeling alone. And now through this resource that I created for other people, I've realized that I'm not alone in this either.
And I agree, that is an interesting offshoot of social media, that sometimes I think we do feel in so many different realms alone, like we must have the only opinion or the only whatever, and then we realize, we're not. And you've made an interesting comment too in the past about Instagram, how like you'd be jealous of your own Instagram life. And I think that's the flip side and the downside of social media. Everyone looks perfect.
And I try to make like a concerted effort to post, like, I had a panic attack today, I am not feeling great about this, just because I don't want to not practice what I preach. But it's so hard because sometimes you're just having the worst day and you're like, I know I could post a bunch of likes if I post this like very perfect thing, and then I'll get some positive feedback. And yeah, that's how, like, if I look at my Instagram, I'm like, I'm not posting like the fact that it took me an hour to convince myself to get out of bed this morning. I'm posting like all the cool things. I'm like, I'm going on this cool interview show, I'm like going to my amazing job, and those are all true things I'm very lucky about too. But you know, it's also that nobody's life is what it looks like when it's just what they want to show you.
So true. And I feel like that's a message that everybody can do to remember, looking at anyone's Twitter, Instagram, or social media, or posts on Facebook or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because exactly, most people aren't going to put like, I had a horrible time today.
Right.
I'm so sad, like someone please help. They're gonna say like, right, look at this really cool thing I'm doing, or look at the apple I'm eating.
Right, exactly. It's like you like throwing this sort of version of you out there so nobody looks at the real one sometimes, I think.
And you've done a great job with being so honest about where you're coming from, even back to the site. So
Thank you. Yeah, it's, you know, one funny thing just about Neurotica is that I had a lot of people commenting who were skeptical about the show depicting OCD because OCD gets incorrectly depicted so much of the time. And I realized, like, oh, they don't look at me and see the OCD. I look at me and see the OCD because I live in my own head.
Right.
They're looking at me and thinking, oh, she's like an actor who just has her stuff together and, you know, doesn't know what she's talking about. And I don't blame them. I might think the same thing. But it's funny because I think when people look at me, they're looking at the version of me I see. And the truth is we're all creating something for other people to look at.
Right. Right, regardless of being an actor, writer, or anything else. So before we wrap up, let's wrap up on a positive.
Yes,
I
definitely.
know on Twitter, right before you came on, you were doing lots of like positive things.
I was, yeah.
So tell me, what is the most positive thing you can think of right this minute?
Baby elephants suck their trunks like baby humans suck their thumbs.
Very cute.
Thank
Goal!
you. It's my favorite fact. When I learned it, I cried.
That is adorable.
Yeah,
and I did not know that, so thank you for teaching us.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And Jenny, where can everyone find you on social media?
At Jenny Jaffe on Twitter and Instagram. I'm also Jenny Jaffe. I have a public Facebook, and there's a Neurotica Facebook page, which you should definitely check out, and go to projectyouareok.org if you're interested in learning more about Project You Are Okay.
And that's you, like the letter U, not you, Y-O-U.
Okay. No,
Awesome.
yeah.
And I'm Zoe Hewitt. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RealZoeHewitt. Thanks so much for joining us, After Buzzers. Bye-bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.